liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you. Have a roll call.
Mayor Hassler.
Here.
Alderwoman Cleghorn. Here. Alderwoman Johnson. Here. Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Jokers.
Here.
Alderman Eidman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince. Alderwoman Armbruster. Here. Mayor quorum.
Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Yes.
There is?
So Sally Barnett's with Cochran is with us on hello on our Zoom. We don't really have an issue with the first resolution. We're working on the ARPA for the water lines. We have that kind of narrowed down to a couple of generators for wells and water mains that we've looked at improving over on Rozier, Leahy, and on Roberts. Those are probably our worst lines, oldest lines. They're cast iron. They have more breaks than the others. So we're looking at probably focusing on those for next year to get done. And that would be using ARPA and some of our reserve funds. So we've narrowed it down to about $1.5 million. That includes the engineering. Cochran recommends that we don't include engineering on that, but I don't think we have. By not including that, we end up with more money out of our reserves, and I just don't think I want to go that far.
Yeah.
So.
Did you say cast iron water or sewer?
Water.
Water?
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah. There's one transite. The one on Rozier is transite, so that's really brittle. The others are cast iron. Yeah.
Rust of water. Place it's not lead.
So on the second resolution, it's the ARPA money for, the TAP money for the sidewalk. The issue that we bumped into is on our GIS, you can look at St. Mary's Lane, you know it's 50 foot wide, then it works its way past Seraphin and then towards Main Street. Main Street's 36 feet wide. Those have been determined. Cochran's got those numbers. But at Seraphin, we don't know if we have 50 foot or 36, because the way the GIS looks, it kind of curves in. So there's a portion that could be 50, but we don't know for sure. We don't have any plat maps to refer to. So the issue comes down to putting the sidewalk in. We end up with a narrow road that we would need to get some easement or right-of-way from the neighbors. And one of the neighbors that I've talked to says no. He does not want to give right-of-way. So that I don't have time to negotiate and try to get that worked through. There are some other issues that he has with the city and is at this point not willing to talk any further about it. Very cordial, no issues with that. It's just no, not going to. So that kind of stops us from working our way up St. Mary's Lane to Seraphin.
Shouldn't be too much.
So we could look at either not doing that project, wait a couple more years, we can do some surveying and find out what exactly that road entails from Seraphin back towards Main Street, or we can cut it down to a smaller section and we go from Seraphin down to Hillside, which on another map it's called Terrace Heights. So I got multiple names of the same street. But it goes into that trailer park just past the Beckett-Ribo house. Yeah. So it's up to the board how you want to proceed on that. If you want to go with a smaller project, it seems to it doesn't meet what we want it to do, which is to extend from one NPS building to another NPS building. It just kind of then starts it in the middle of a block, and we just end up with a sidewalk to not really to nowhere, but it doesn't accomplish what we want.
I apologize. I didn't follow when you talked about the time frame to have it surveyed. You're saying in a couple of years they have it surveyed so we would have more detail.
Yeah, because at this point we have to have it submitted by July 15th. So we aren't going to have enough time to survey it properly. Okay. Get those numbers and then be able to include that with the application.
Okay.
And we don't have time to negotiate.
When we talk about surveying and stuff, I mean, I know there's some places in town it's just the width of the pavement. We don't have an actual dimension, just the existing width of the pavement. But can't we refer back to the property corners of the property the private properties, doesn't that determine the end of their property, but wouldn't that determine the start of ours?
If they're marked. If they're not marked, then we don't know.
Right, but I mean, it's still a survey and stuff, but
Right.
that
So-
would be interesting to know, because, over the years, those streets have changed and moved and,
Well, and that's a phone call, right? Either you have that or you don't have that, and we move on if they don't.
what, you mean the corners?
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, it still requires probably a certified survey.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To establish that corner.
But I'm saying that information is recorded somewhere.
Well, it is, but it doesn't set that. It'll tell you what the dimensions of their property is, but it doesn't tell you where that exact corner is. The survey establishes that exact corner unless they have a certified pin marking it, and they probably don't.
Usually you start with a benchmark. Somewhere there's a benchmark that you begin your survey and you work your way towards that area, and then
Right.
you have all those measurements. And that's usually, they're going to have to go in and get title work done, or go into the recorder's office and get whatever's recorded to get the exact information, exact distances, angles, all that.
So the questionable property is from the Green Tree to Seraphim.
Yes.
So we could do from Seraphim to Hillside now, and then on a future TAP grant, close that gap.
What I
possibly.
would recommend at that point is we then go from Seraphim back up to Main Street and connect in, make that path up to the sidewalk that exists.
I think we ought to go that route, because I think you could probably, maybe the National Park Service would say, hey, we want to finish it, we want to make this happen. So I think we do that. I think we do what we can down there from Seraphim down to Terrace Heights, and then do like you said, we'll look at the rest of it, but in the
Where's
future then, that's back to, where the trailer park is, it goes up the hill.
Oh,
Yeah, so it'd be those,
Ain't that hillside?
Hillside, yeah.
That's the way the sign shows.
Yeah.
I've got a map that says Terrace Heights. I don't know why.
well, it is too, it used to be Terrace Heights.
Okay, okay. All right.
so we're talking about going that far just to basically take in all of National Park's property?
We're starting at a stopping point that we know where we've got the right-of-way width that I can run, we can have sidewalk run down the street without impacting the residents, except for some parking along the street, but, we work to figure out how to make accomplish that, but we have the right-of-way that we don't have to purchase.
So where does the National Park's property actually end?
It ends at Amaro House and the Creole, where that entrance is for the Creole House, because next to that's the Beckett-Ribo House, and that's owned by Chalmette. So, but I think going from intersection to intersection, when we had
Right.
Cochran come in, Terry said, it's best to go from intersection to intersection. Just
Right.
makes sense.
Are there concerns, that where St. Mary's Road veers and Main Street continues straight? That's a very odd intersection. There are concerns with how, if we're going to put the sidewalk, we're just talking about the one side.
Right. We're looking at utilizing that bridge that's there in the future, and then seeing if we can work with, this is down the road, working with Jure de Fête to see if we can put a path in that would complement their area, as well as get people off the street, because you've got the bridge anyway as an impediment. So we see going to where the Green Tree is and then crossing the street, putting in a new bridge, and then running a sidewalk down towards Main Street.
Okay, so we're not at all concerned with that. We would be using the existing bridge if we were able to start there. So like in the future, that's where there would be a crosswalk and then sidewalk on the side
Unless
of
we
the
have
Green
a
Tree.
good marked crosswalk there, because that's kind of a,
That bridge is starting to show its age.
Yeah, and they've looked at that. Cochran actually looked at that. We didn't ask them to do that, but they looked at it and went, yeah, that's got some,
Yeah.
yeah, it's exactly what you said, it's showing.
So then losing that section
Did you look at it?
because of that, that's one other factor that's probably better to put it off and get a better long-term solution.
My thought was that the cost to run from that bridge back to Main Street would be expensive. that's gonna cost more putting in another bridge.
Yeah.
And that would, if we have that other extension to Green Tree, then that was gonna save that much more money. We were under 500,000, which was, I think, it's a limit. So we were within what we could afford to do, but it's getting,
Yeah.
it's gonna then add on to that, and what will the limit be the next time we wanna put in for town money? We may exceed that.
So with these changes here, do we still see benefit in doing this project before connecting Rozier?
Well, we don't have time to jump on
No
that.
time on that, okay.
Because the state had to look at what we had planned on doing before the end of June.
Yeah.
So we passed that point.
Gotcha.
We can't jump back on that. So,
Yeah, just making sure.
yeah.
I think it's still worth doing, especially because I would think eventually we'd want to extend all the way out to Highway 61. So at least we'll have a large section,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then we can
Yeah,
finish it.
I wasn't
in the
arguing, I'm
future,
just
yeah.
making sure that we're capitalizing on as much of the grant as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put at risk this evening about $380,000, I guess, if we don't,
Yeah.
or we put that off. I mean, we'll see a value of about $380,000 if we move forward, is what I'm looking at.
Right. Yeah, so we'd be including engineering on that as well.
This tap, this comes around at regular intervals, or is this a special
It's
tied to
usually,
ARPA?
it used to be every year, now it's like every 2 years. This round is 2 years.
Okay,
So we expect another round in 2 more years that would be for this type of.
what's that acronym, TAB?
Transportation Alternatives Program.
Okay.
And then if we do this sidewalk, are we then responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's part
is
of what
what
we have
we
to
want.
include.
Gotta be done right.
That's right, let's do it right.
Doesn't mean that we go out and shovel it when it snows.
Right,
But we
right.
will maintain it.
Okay.
There you go.
Any other questions? Do you have any more questions?
No, if everybody is good with that, then just have to pass your consent agenda.
That's right, I'll need a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. With that, there's no other business. We'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.